Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 The Scores, Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune up at Halas Hall as preparation for Saturday's Bills-Bears preseason game in Buffalo continue. Dan, what's the latest? Matt Eberflus announced Caleb Williams will start. So will Josh Allen for the Bills. So people looking for something will finally get something to evaluate as is Josh Allen versus Caleb Williams.
Yeah, we will have a football game to watch for about 45 minutes with the frontline starters. And so if you're setting your alarm clock on your phone, noon to 12:45, that's the window of time that you should block off if you're interested in watching Caleb Williams play. Matt was a little bit vague on Thursday afternoon, David, in telling us how long Caleb Williams and the healthy offensive starters and defensive starters would play. He said they have a target number of reps in mind, but refused to share what that target number is. And so some of it will be probably a flow of game dynamic that will dictate things. But at the very least, we will get one series, probably two series. And then if it goes beyond that, we'll see where it goes.
The uncertainty surrounded the health of the offensive line going from left tackle back across to right tackle. Who do you think starts on Saturday and who would be missing because of injury?
This is a tough one here now because Nate Davis, injury update on that end today, was revealed to have had a setback with whatever soft tissue injury he's been dealing with. He is now listed as week to week. So if you are keeping tabs on Nate Davis day to day, you no longer have to do so. Week to week now on Nate Davis. Ryan Bates, the guy who had slid over into the right guard position, had to come out of practice today because he suffered an injury. Don't know how serious that is or whether that will prevent him from getting back on the field in his return to Buffalo. And so we will we'll get a feel for that. So I think you're looking at Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins on the left side. I think you're looking at Coleman Shelton starting at center, potentially Ryan Bates, if not Matt Pryor at the guard position. And then I don't know, will it be Darnell Wright? Does he have enough after being banged up a little earlier in the week to give them a series or two, or will you go to Larry Borom? So that's kind of my guess right now on how that goes left to right.
Because of the uncertainty on the offensive line, if you want to call it that, because it's Caleb Williams' first game, would you expect the Bears to be heavy run and on the short, quick passing game?
Yeah, I mean, like one of the main purposes of this game is to just get Caleb Williams used to game speed at the NFL level. And so I think you'll see some runs early. You want to get DeAndre Swift probably a couple touches as well, whether that's as a ball carrier or as a pass catcher in the screen game or something that gets him involved a little bit. And so you're going to want to protect Caleb. You know, I don't think you're going to be dialing up any shot plays unless you want to go max protect and make sure that he's going to be able to get back there and not get hit. But yeah, a lot of this is just to get him used to the flow. We'll get into this in our later episode about some of the more nuanced stuff that they're going to be looking at with Caleb Williams. But I think you've got a pretty good feel for where they're going to head in trying to just get this offense into game speed right now, and then to adjust from there and get back to practice next week with a little bit more to build off of.
Since we last gathered, Shane Waldron addressed the Bears media corps, and I think he was keeping things positive about Caleb Williams. He spoke after a particularly bad offensive practice. Caleb had only 2 completions during 11 on 11. That was on Wednesday. Shane Waldron is a guy who you look at, and there's a lot of expectations. Anything new in regard to what he had to say or what direction you think this offense is headed?
Well, I'll just tell you this, that if Wednesday was a shaky day offensively, Thursday was even worse. And so there was an interception earlier in the practice where Caleb Williams threw a ball to Keenan Allen that was picked off by Elijah Hicks, who's filling in for the injured Jaquan Brisker. By the way, a Kyler Gordon injury update. He is still trying to make his way back from a left leg injury. We believe it to be his calf. Kyler Gordon has been out for more than 2 weeks now, David. That was originally day to day, and now we're on like day 16 of the Kyler Gordon absence. So keep your eye on that. Matt insisted he was close. I digress. I had a little side route there, but just to let you know that some of these secondary guys have been out: Gordon, Brisker, Tyreek Stevenson. And so when you're getting picked off by Elijah Hicks, you better go back in the film room and figure out why. At the end of practice in a 2-minute situation, Caleb Williams picked off again by Kevin Byard. And so this has been a bit of a rickety offensive week for the Bears. And so I think Shane has to use the perspective of, look, like, we're doing a lot of experimentation. We're still trying to install. We're still trying to get a feel for where we want to streamline our offense heading toward week 1 in the Titans, and you use that perspective to make the headaches go away, because there are going to be some headaches here in the early going with this offense, and I think people need to be ready for that.
It sounds like a typical annual plea for patience when you're watching an NFL offense come together in a football city that is used to some pretty mediocre offenses. But I don't think that this is a very typical, usual NFL preseason in a football city. This is expectations are enormous, and I think that maybe they're oversized. And I think I would accept
Yeah.
responsibility for being part of that. That's the part that, as Shane Waldron talked about the realities, and you see the reports about the struggles, you wonder where this all is headed.
No question. And the only way to know where it's headed is to head there with the Bears, and be in lockstep with them every step of this journey that they take. And it's going to proceed in Buffalo on Saturday afternoon, and then we'll go from there. And we know what next week brings, with the Bengals coming to town for a crossover practice, and then a preseason game 2 days after that, and then a quick short week turnaround into the final preseason game with the Chiefs. And so I've said all week, like, you look down at your calendar and you say, okay, we've got plenty of time before we have to go play a meaningful game in the regular season. At the same time, this little 12 to 13 day window that opens Saturday in Buffalo is going to feature a lot of meaningful time and work that needs to get done in that period to really get particularly offense and Caleb Williams up and running. And so we'll see where that all heads.
He remains a rookie, Dan, and I know you want to discuss exactly what that means in the context of the Bears, and their growth as a franchise, but also in the context of the season and where this team could be headed, with a guy who's going to have his ups and downs. As much as everybody is happy that he's here, as much as Hard Knocks can portray him and present him as, maybe Michael Jordan-esque, there's still a long way to go. And I think people like us, and I'll speak for myself, have to remember that he is just a rookie.
Yeah, so I wanted to present 3 questions to you, having been on the beat here for all of training camp to this point, and kind of like filtering through my notebook and figuring out some things that I've felt, some things that I've thought, some things that I wanted to banter back and forth with you about. We'll start there with my first question. Of the 3 questions I have for you on today's episode, the first one is Chicago ready for a rookie quarterback again? And is a rookie quarterback ready for Chicago? And I think that speaks to all of those things that you just talked about, and we should flush it out just a little bit as Caleb gets ready to make his preseason debut Saturday.
I have more questions about the latter than the former, because I think that I wonder if Caleb Williams is ready for all that comes with being the Bears quarterback if things go well, and I guess maybe more significantly if things don't. I think that is the unknown. That's a bigger unknown in terms of those 2 questions than the first one. The first question is Chicago ready for a rookie quarterback? Absolutely not. Never has been, and never will be. I mean, that is an easy answer, because we have been through this before in relative different degrees. But, it seems like it was just 2017, much different circumstance, Mitch Trubisky, but we got carried away there with the expectations and all of the things that came with him replacing Mike Glennon and playing that season. We got carried away with Justin Fields, and I think that Justin Fields was mismanaged as a rookie. He was thrown into the fray against Cleveland, and we all don't need to relitigate that. But I think that whether it's the fan base, it's partly the media, it's just not knowing how to react to having someone like Caleb Williams play the most important position on the field as a rookie, that we don't really quite know how to process that responsibly.
I think it's also the landscape here, right? And it's the idea that this team has apparently made an ascent to be ready to contend for a playoff berth. And so you walk into the regular season fully expecting to be a team that doesn't have to sit in the bottom right corner of the In the Hunt graphic in December. You expect to be firmly in the middle of, the wild card chase or the division championship chase. And because of that, the struggles of a rookie quarterback are going to feel much heavier than they would in most other years for a rookie quarterback. And so I think there's a weight to that is going to set this city up potentially for a very rude awakening in September when they see what a rookie quarterback looks like again. I think you just live through 3 years of Justin Fields and you forget what the first 5, 6 starts were like with Justin Fields, where your head's spinning as a quarterback. You don't know everything that you're seeing. You don't know how to react to everything you're seeing. You have some really poor plays that end in poor drives that end in poor results at the end of the day, and you have to adjust to all of those things. And so with that, like, I think that the audience that is going to be sitting down on their couch for the first time on Saturday afternoon, and then obviously doing so during the regular season, has to prepare themselves for how rickety and bumpy this is going to be in the early stages of a rookie quarterback. I think inside the building here, they've got their feet firmly on the ground and they understand where they're at and where they need to go. I don't think the outside world has any clue about how much the struggle is going to be jarring, I think, in the early going.
This is the weird thing to, I guess, acknowledge or admit, is that based on the way that we have seen the Bears talk about Caleb Williams, handle the pre-draft process, through the draft process, through the OTAs and mini camps, and now training camp, I believe that the organization has handled the arrival of a future potential star better than the fan base, the media core, and just the people who are, you typically ask this question and you look at, okay, are we as collectively Chicago ready for a rookie quarterback? I think the Bears are. I don't know if the rest of the city is, because I think that you're right. Early on, those struggles will be expected and handled internally better than they will be outside the building. And outside the building, the fear will be that perception becomes that, oh boy, if he struggles. Oh boy, he's a bust. Oh boy, told you so. Oh boy, why did they give it to him for Justin Fields, who just won 2 games for the Steelers? These are all things that are possible. And I think that I have more confidence, I guess, maybe I should frame it that way. I probably have more confidence that the Bears are going to be able to handle the early, maybe slow development or gradual development of this potential star than the rest of the city.
You remember October, early November of 2022, and Justin Fields got on the heater that turned him into Chicago's big hope. And yet it was the heater that came along with games that the Bears lost. And at that time it was, oh, who cares that we lost? It's no big deal. The quarterback is the real deal. And he's running for 197 yards and he's making these plays and he's making our head spin. That's not going to exist for Caleb Williams. If he plays well and they lose, I think there's going to be oh God, like, what's happening here? If he plays poorly and they lose, it's going to be even louder because this team has such high expectations as a group. And so I'm just really curious and a little bit fearful of what the conversation in town is going to be in those first 6, 7, 8 weeks of the year, because we know what's at stake here. And again, like, I think inside the building, they understand here. And there was a question asked earlier this week to Matt Eberflus about the idea of feeling the urgency to have Caleb Williams ready for week 1 and being able to compete and try to win a game against the Tennessee Titans at Soldier Field, while also understanding that he does not need to be a finished product on September 8th, and that the goal of this entire organization is to make sure that he's the best quarterback possible for the next 10 to 15 years. And so you're kind of feeling 2 separate dynamics there, but Matt said it's really one and the same answer for him. And then it's just like staying grounded in the day-to-day process and realizing that, while all of Chicago wants a time machine to Caleb Williams' arrival, Caleb Williams and the Bears understand that they got to climb the stairs to get there, and that the staircase is a long way from where they want to go.
That's a great example that I think backs up what I just said. I also think, last thing on this question before we move on to the next one, that's why the way as polished as he is and as maybe as accomplished as the talent, at least, it reminds me more of, and don't bristle out there if you're listening, it reminds me more of 2009 with Jay Cutler.
Okay.
When Jay Cutler,
he came into a ready-made team, right?
He came to a very ready-made team, and there were expectations that were similar in terms of size and scope.
I like this
because Jay Cutler was a Pro Bowl quarterback, and there was much expected from him. First preseason game, I told this story this morning with Mully, and we both remembered it well. We knew it was going to be a different experience than the one we anticipated when he threw an interception against the Bills in Buffalo in the first preseason game in 2009. Devin Hester was the intended receiver. After the game, it was a deep ball. We asked Jay, what happened? Well, you know what? Mully and I were standing next to Cutler. Hey, what happened on that pass? Well, Devin isn't a go up and get it guy.
Yeah.
Basically, he threw his receiver under the bus. Mully looked at me, I looked at him, and we both knew what the headline was the next morning in those newspapers, and in the Sun Times and the Tribune, because that was the takeaway. The takeaway was Jay Cutler, questionable leader, going to throw a lot of picks and blame everybody else. Point is that you got a sense that those struggles were going to be something that we weren't ready for because of the enormous expectations. He threw 5 picks, I think, early on in first game, and then he had a hard time overcoming some of those things. Maybe we've learned our lesson as a fan base, as a media corps, but to me, that's why this reminds me more of the Cutler experience than any of the other 2 rookie experiences, because you're going to see right away, you're going to be judging Caleb Williams, the quarterback, much the way we were Jay Cutler, the quarterback.
My last word on that, and I like the comp, and I'll use the other guy that you brought up in that anecdote, and it's Devin Hester. And coming out of Hall of Fame weekend, you were reminded of what Devin Hester did to elevate the guys around him, who then helped elevate Devin Hester, if that makes sense. And so I think that there is a power right now that Caleb Williams has, in that he has connected with so many guys on both sides of the ball, and that it has heightened their focus to do what they need to do to help him be at his best, because they recognize special ability here. They recognize special passion and special hunger in Caleb Williams. And so it has heightened sort of the collective buy-in on how can we get this guy to the level that we know he's capable of reaching sooner. Devin took it all the way to a Hall of Fame career. And you talk to guys that played on special teams with him, and they said, look, like, we were locked in every time we were on the field with him because we knew he could do something special. I feel that from teammates of Caleb Williams inside the building right now. I talked today with Mercedes Lewis, 40 years old, who just is invigorated by the way Caleb's daily approach brings guys together. He listens more than he speaks. He's an eager learner. He is constantly picking the brains of teammates to try to get better in the areas where he's deficient. And that creates a respect and a universal buy-in for guys to try to lift you while you're trying to lift yourself. And I think that's important here as well.
Great example of the big dog giving an assessment of
Love the
Caleb.
big dog.
What's the second question?
My second question for you is, on Tuesday night, we both sat down. I did it on streaming. I don't know if you've still got cable, but HBO gave us Hard Knocks. We watched the first 55-minute installment of that. You and I spoke earlier this week with Shannon Furman, the director of the program. And I wanted you to help me figure out, is Hard Knocks striking the right chord with this team right now? There's a lot to unpack here in this question, but I'll let you start it off.
I think they're definitely striking the right chord. I think they did a phenomenal job in episode 1. I'm a sucker for a good television production. I know what I'm watching when I'm seeing a football game. I don't need HBO to tell me what's important on a football team. I want the behind the scenes access. I want the over exaggerated drama. I want the slow motion. I want all of what they provide. I think they did a phenomenal job early in episode 1 of giving us some characters. This is a TV show. It's not a film review. And Austin Reed, the offensive lineman who got the nickname, and then he got hurt. Forgive me for not remembering the guy who's going to get
Theo
cut. Theo Benedette. All right.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. I don't have the 88th guy in the roster, his name memorized. But I also like the way that they presented Caleb Williams as the unquestioned star of this show and this program. And frankly, the reason that they're here. Matt Eberflus is going to come out of this looking terrific. I think he's going to get a boost in his stature and reputation in the offseason of Flusy. It's his offseason, man. He's really repackaged the way that he is presented. And I love the Nick Saban stuff. So for an hour, what they did was, this is a commercial for what I think, and maybe this is giving him too much credit, but to me, when we talk about the positive impact that Kevin Warren has provided on this organization, he has given it polish. He's given it a little bit of a pizzazz. And in Hard Knocks, the first hour, episode 1, you saw a lot of polish and you saw some pizzazz, and I loved it.
So I thought it was a fun episode to get us started. I thought the opening was terrific. There was only one place to start, and it's on the phone call on draft night to Caleb Williams, in which Matt Eberflus referred to as what he believes will be an iconic moment in Chicago Bears history, the union between Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. I liked the Nick Saban office scene without question. There's a lot of fly on the wall intrigue to a sitting like that. I would have liked to see 15 more minutes of
Yeah,
that. And I
me
feel like
too.
the challenge that Hard Knocks has with all the footage that they have is narrowing it down and giving you a little bit of sampling of everything. Well, I'm a little bit fearful that we're not going to get the meal that we want as we're sampling all these little dishes. And so I say that in this regard, right? Like Hard Knocks' charm and the formula that they've used to be so successful over the years is kind of giving you behind the scenes look at some of the under the radar stories of training camps of NFL teams around uh, the league, right? What my fear is that they're going to veer too far off of center stage in the next month and not stay with a team that has so many compelling center stage storylines right now, beginning with Caleb Williams. I said to a colleague walking in here today that you could do an entire 1 hour episode of behind the scenes footage of Caleb Williams talking to anyone in the building, and it would be gobbled up and become the most watched show on television for the next
Right.
week. And I think you could just stay there and not feel the temptation to like, oh, we got to get over to the story of the receiver who caught 7 passes in the second preseason game at Buffalo. We got to tell the story of the linebacker who had an interception of Josh Allen, or whatever it may be. So I'm fearful that we're going to get too far off course, veering toward the underdog and under the radar storylines, that we lose sight of the fact that they have hours and hours and hours of footage and access that you and I would kill for.
Yeah.
To tell these stories of the center stage guys. That, like, there could be a whole second program that's just like, remember that scene you saw in Hard Knocks with Nick Saban and Matt Eberflus? Well, here's the entire conversation.
Right.
Here's a half an hour
They
episode
can
on just
capitalize.
that.
They can monetize. Right? They can do a lot of things.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I come at with that, because I think there's a lot to tell here. And I think for the first time in a long time, I think the center stage here is super, super compelling.
All right. So before we get off this topic for question number 3, think of it this way. Sometimes when you go to a restaurant, you referred to the big meal and all that. But sometimes when you go to the restaurant, you're looking at the menu, and excuse me, and the entrees look great. And you're talking about an entree. You're worried about being disappointed by the entree. Don't get focused on the entree. This is going into a restaurant with good martinis and a lot of good appetizers.
Yeah, you want me to have tapas here, and I want like a big, I want a big
tapas.
meal in front of me.
Think tapas, because you're gonna get a dish of this and a dish of that, and you're gonna be very satisfied in the end. It's just gonna be more of a variety than one big meal. This doesn't have to be meat and potatoes, okay? This can be anything you want it to be, plate by plate. Martinis with a little bit of for the accent. And I think if you think of it that way, you'd be more nourished.
I guess this is my public plea to get all of the content that hits the cutting room floor, because I want to watch it all. I want to see everything that's going on. And like I say, like even the DJ Moore contract extension the other day, I could have watched 15 minutes on that, and I think we got maybe about 4 minutes. And so there's a lot here. And but yeah, it segues. Go ahead.
If only you could write, you would think somebody might want to get a book out of this season or start thinking that way.
I probably should start thinking that way.
Do you write actually, or you just talk? You write, don't you? Oh yeah,
it's kind of been evolving. We can talk a little bit more about that.
To question 3.
Question 3? Do I still write? No, I'm sorry. Question number 3. This one is a good one, and it's a good timely topic because I don't think we've talked about it enough. And the question number 3 for you, David, right now is Jaylon Johnson low key becoming one of the best defenders in the NFL? I asked this question to you because Jaylon met with the media over the weekend. He was snubbed from the NFL Network's top 100 players for 2023, 2024. I don't know how they define it. I do know how they vote for it, and I'll get to that in a second. And yet every single day that I come out to training camp here, this dude is making plays on some really, really good receivers that he's covering, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and others. And putting together a camp that leads me to believe that there's an ascent still happening here. And so I'll leave it there for you, and then we'll hear from Jaylon, and we'll hear a little bit from Keenan Allen, and we'll continue the discussion.
I like this question because it allows me to give credit where it's due. Jaylon Johnson is becoming one of those lockdown corners every Super Bowl contender needs. And if the Bears want to be a Super Bowl contender, they're going to need him to be that guy on the field, staying healthy, and then shutting down the other team's number 1 wide receiver, the Justin Jefferson that every team wants to have, or maybe in the case of the Vikings, they do. Earlier in the week, I pushed back a little bit because I thought that Brad Biggs and I had a good debate about, he said last year was the most dominant year of any corner he's seen in 23 years in Chicago. And I referenced Nathan Vasher, Tim Jennings, Charles Tillman with 10 forced fumbles. And that's okay. That's a debate. But what that distracted us from was just how skilled, fundamentally sound, and complete Jaylon Johnson is as a number one shutdown cornerback. So I do think that he is becoming one of the best defenders in the league. I think by the end of the year, we could be looking at him and Montez Sweat as being equal in terms of impact on this defense. Right now, I'd give Sweat a slight edge, but it's a good point because every team that the Bears play, if they stay in playoff contention, is going to have that receiver that needs shut down, and Jaylon Johnson's the guy for the job.
We're going to play a couple audio clips here. The first one, a little entry point into what I think makes Jaylon Johnson special. This was his reaction last weekend when asked about being left off of that top 100 list. This would not be suitable for Hard Knocks because there was some cursing in it, but here's Jaylon Johnson.
There ain't no way. I don't know how you make Pro Bowl, All Pro, and you're not a top 100 guy. I could have been 101, I guess, but Aaron Rodgers didn't even play in the season. He was voted. So, hey, everybody made mistakes. It ain't just the media that do it. The players, clearly, if they voted for this, they made some mistakes. But it is what it is. End of the day, I know the truth, and it's okay. I got some more for him.
Does stuff like that, though, drive you a little? Maybe not drive you, but does it just kind of feed?
100%. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. Yeah, no, it's disrespectful because I know I go out there and line up, and I know receivers go out there and can't say that I'm not one of the best people, best player they played against. So, just whatever it is, it happened. It doesn't, doing it, that wouldn't have just moved me to where I feel like I'm complacent or anything, but just to see it, ain't no way 100 guys better. Ain't no way. And especially guys who didn't play, who were hurt, played half. I'm sorry, excuse my language. Ain't no way. Ain't no way.
First of all, David, Shannon Furman said she didn't have to go through a lot of tape with profanity in it. Well, she must have missed Jaylon's podium session the other day. Why I think that makes him special is because we had questions, right? Like Jaylon Johnson was clearly motivated in 2023 by chasing his second NFL contract. And the question was, when he gets paid and when he gets that reward, is it going to lead him into a place of satisfaction and complacency? The answer is a no. The second answer is a hell no. The third answer is a hell no with an exclamation point behind it, because you can feel the competitive, I guess, passion that Jaylon has. You can feel his want to be respected with everything he does. You can feel the fact that when he gets one achievement or one honor or one reward, he wants the next one immediately. Right. And he's not going to stop until he gets it. And so you feel the way this guy ticks, and you felt it all off season, that season he had last year that he's very proud of, that earned him that second contract. It's only just the beginning. And to see him then channel that into a really productive training camp and be playing every single day out here with that passion and that edge that I think brings other guys along with him, man, it's pretty inspiring stuff, if you ask me.
I think there's an ego that needs fed, and that's okay. I think there's an intensity.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
It's a good thing. There's an intensity that burns, and that's a better thing. So he has both, and he can thank the NFL Network for providing that motivation and that fuel that he might have lacked a little bit or not been in shorter supply without that, because you're right. Guys get paid and then they relax. He's not going to be one of those guys. And that's why I think, the great ones find the slights wherever they can, perceived or otherwise. And Jaylon Johnson is a great NFL cornerback. When you are one of the four best cornerbacks in the NFL, given the way the league has evolved, you're a great player. So I think that for whatever reason, he wasn't recognized that way. But I do think in the end, it will be a bonus for the Bears.
Let's hear really quickly from Keenan Allen on what he respects about Jaylon Johnson, and then I'll give you a little context on that top 100 list. Here's Keenan Allen first.
Patient. He plays his assignment well. He knows routes, squats, which means he sits on routes, and so he's always looking, to make a pass breakup or something like that. He doesn't like anybody to catch the ball on him. He's greedy in that way, which is a good thing. So, good competitor.
Keenan Allen was the one that was disrupted by Jaylon Johnson at the goal line in the Pro Bowl flag football game last winter. So he knows the type of game-winning plays Jaylon Johnson can make. The last thing I'll tell you is this top 100 list comes out every year, and those of us who are in buildings every year always roll our eyes at it, because what happens in the month of December, the NFL Network sends people out to these buildings and they're in an open locker room session, and there are people going around with a card that lists, I think it's either 10 or 20, and they want people to fill out the card. Who are the guys you're going to put on the list for top 100? Sometimes the locker room's empty and you're grabbing a practice squad tight end and saying, can you fill this out really quick? Sometimes there's a guy who's just eating lunch at his locker, trying to get to his massage before he has to get to his meeting, and he gets stuck after 3 players, and there's somebody over his shoulder going, why don't you put down Travis Kelce? Why don't you write down Von Miller? And all of a sudden they're getting suggestions from people that are there. This isn't a scientific full canvassing in the league. Everybody votes, they put down their top 20 players, and then they rank them. It's a very haphazard, in my opinion, formula to getting this together to make a TV show for the summer and the off season. And then it leaves people like Jaylon Johnson feeling a little snubbed. And the good news for the Bears is it leaves them feeling a little motivated as well.
You know what? That's great background and context. I don't think people realize that. But as long as Jaylon Johnson thinks that it was Jared Goff, Jordan Love, and Justin Jefferson voting twice for somebody else, then that's going to work for the Bears.
That's great. Next time I talk to him, I'm going to tell him that it was those guys that did that, and we'll see what his reaction is.
They voted twice. They did it the Chicago way, and they did it so it will eventually benefit the Bears. That's great stuff, Dan. And so another week of preparation wraps up, getting ready for Saturday's Bills-Bears game. We'll have a preview of that on Saturday morning here on the Take the North pod. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, looking forward to getting to Buffalo. Like I told you earlier, that trip was one that I was sort of dreading when the preseason schedule came out. Caleb Williams makes his debut. There's a lot more intrigue, so I will willingly get on my flight Friday night and get to, I think it's Highmark Stadium now, to see Bills Mafia in attendance for Caleb Williams' debut.
I hope you arrive earlier than 2 a.m. like you did in Cleveland. That was
me too,
a long day.
You and me both.
So for Adam Studzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer at Haugh Hall, I'm David Haugh. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast. You can get it on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts, and watching on 670 Scores YouTube page. We'll see you next time.
Great talk. See you out there.